That's interesting. Let's transition a little bit and look forward in time. And you've already begun mentioning some of that with your examples on the technology front. What are some of the emerging technologies and their applications that you see as you move forward, enhancing your opportunity to make a difference in conservation?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I live really close to Banff National Park, and they have been long experimenting in cell phone technology, just in terms of actually helping people to find parking spots. And so one of the challenge is there's the busiest highway in Canada called the Trans-Canada Highway, goes right through the park. And when the park is really busy, cars are actually backed out onto the Trans-Canada Highway, which is a safety issue. And it's not necessarily that there weren't enough parking spots, but people were having a hard time finding them. And so traffic was backing up. And so by using simple cell phone technology, they were able to sort of indicate where there might be parking over the long haul. So, it's probably not a long-term fix, but it's an interesting shorter-term fix. I think also, our ability to look at recreation in the backcountry. One of my colleagues is working with a whole consortium of scientists to understand where and how people are recreating in the backcountry. And that's using apps like Strava and AllTrails and even cell phone data to get a sense of where people actually are on the landscape and at what densities. And what we can ultimately do with that data that's so cool is overlay that to see, are we starting to see human activity in areas that might be particularly sensitive? Maybe there's an endangered species or it's really critical habitat, so that we can actively manage for that and keep that particular part of nature safe, and also redirect people to other places where it might be better to recreate. In the case of the Yellowstone to Yukon vision, it was created in 1993. And fortunately, those founders were thinking it far ahead. At that time, they were actually also thinking about climate change. So it turns out the vision of connecting and protecting this huge region is a response to climate change, because as the climate continues to change, species, whether they're plants or animals, need to be able to move to the sort of climate envelope that they can survive in. And mountain systems are so important for that, because they can move north and south, but they can also move up in elevation, and they can move to different slopes and aspects, which help them to adapt through this climate change crisis. At the same time, mountain systems are also, particularly in the alpine zone, are changing really fast. And so part of the longer term solution is that we do have to deal with the carbon that we're producing as humans, and we do have to get that under control, even to achieve the Y2Y vision.
So let's talk a little bit about the human capital dimension. Obviously, there are a number of things that students can go do and focus on. I'm just curious how you're finding the challenges in terms of finding students who are interested in moving into this field, versus perhaps them being attracted into other fields.
Yeah, well, it certainly takes passion to be in the biological sciences and dedication, right? There's a lot of training to do, but we do continue to need those kinds of students. I think one of the things that's really exciting in the field of science right now is that we are seeing, I think, what is a really earnest push towards diversifying the student body that's moving into STEM areas of expertise. And I think that's going to be really important in the future for conservation oriented jobs in science. But also there's a lot of other kinds of jobs that can drive forward conservation. We need finance people, right? Thinking about conservation finance, climate, sort of carbon financing. That's a whole area that's really interesting and exciting. We also need communication experts, right? How can we take this incredibly wonky science or really complex issues and communicate it in a way that the general public understands and appreciates and values? We also need people who are really gifted communicators, because conservation gets done, even though we do it sort of on a shoestring budget. because we're able to bring people together to work together on it from all different sectors. And that takes a certain kind of personality and a certain kind of skill set to be able to do that. So it really is about bringing together the diversity of disciplines within the field of conservation. There are a number of different areas. So if one is a focus on government relations, right? How do governments work? If you want to move forward, let's say a protected area policy, it's really important to understand how the government is incentivized and what the policies are and how to move those policies forward. If it's working within a local community, maybe it's an Indigenous community, maybe it's a rural community, and we're looking to find common ground on mutual conservation interests. Understanding community dynamics and what drives those communities forward is really important. It might not be that they might not read about some interesting finding in science and find that a compelling reason to act, but maybe it's getting that information from a neighbor and having a legitimate resource or a trusted person talking to them about this that might actually be a much more effective way to communicate within a particular community. And so understanding those dynamics and being able to guide those dynamics is a really important part of doing that kind of conservation work.